Welcome to a football show Thursday edition, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessean. I am Braden Gall. You can get to us on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Nick Suss at Braden Gall. Mysteriously, followers disappearing left and right. I don't know why that would have happened this week, but there you have it. We got lots of stuff to get to today as the Titans tried to go streaking, of course, with a second win against the Chargers over the weekend out west. A very straight. You haven't really lived this, Nick, because you've been on the beat for a shorter period of time, but very, very strange relationship between the Tennessee Titans and the city of Los Angeles / San Diego when it comes to the Chargers. Very bizarre. So I'm sure you've done all your nerdy Geek Corner research on that, and you'll be able to tell us more about that coming up. Will Levis looks like he is probably going to start. Maybe. We'll see. But really, I wanted to ask you about the decision-making process here for the Titans. Is this the right spot for him? I asked that of Koharski. Would you want to wait another week, make sure he's fully healthy, and not have him play on the road in a terrible place to play on a hard turf where against a very physical, well-coached, disciplined defense like the Chargers? So we'll see. We'll talk about that. We'll also offer a mid-season scouting report on all the rookies. I think it's the right time to do it. I know this is near and dear to your heart, so we'll cover that. And a huge weekend in the SEC with two monster games, probably playoff elimination games in the conference. You got South Carolina-Vandy, you got rankings out, all kinds of good stuff as well. Make sure you check out Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. It's sgwbbq.com. 2 words, 3 letters just in that URL. sgwbbq.com. You go to the website. They've got the button right there at the top. Order your Thanksgiving meal right there. You can do it. And when you do that, of course, you can pick it up on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. They'll have it all cooked for you, all the instructions, everything you need to know, side items, jalapeno cornbread, pumpkin pie, smoked meats. It's all there for you. And then you pop over to Sinkers, which is just down the road from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course, which is right up there off Riley Parkway. Very accessible from all the interstates, very accessible for lunch, of course, 11 to 3 Wednesday through Sunday. You go to Sinkers right there on Gallatin up in East Nashville, 4-time liquor store of the year, and they will pair your Thanksgiving meal with the wines that they recommend that go with Shotgun Willie's barbecue food. It takes all of the stress, Nick, out of the entire Thanksgiving holiday. Now all you have to deal with is preparing to handle your drunken uncle who is probably very excited right now. I don't know anything about your uncle, but maybe.
I'm trying to think if I have an uncle. I clearly have uncles. I don't think I will have any uncles at the Thanksgiving.
I have 2 uncles, like blood uncles, obviously. I've got like in-law uncles, but both of them are long gone. They were my favorites, though.
So
R.I.P. Uncle Scott and Uncle Frank.
There is no reason you should care about this, but I have for years kept a list on my phone called Band Song Album Horse, which is just phrases that I think would make good band names, song names, album names, or horse. And Blood Uncles is on there.
Whoa. Hang on, I can't see that. It's very bright. I can't see it. Wait, it's right Blood there. Uncles was already on there?
Yeah, Blood Uncles has been on here for years. That is not the first time I have heard the phrase Blood Uncles in the wild. I am just so glad that a second person has said Blood Uncles, because the rule is I can only put it on the list if it's a phrase I've never heard anyone else say before. And now I'm like, do I have to take Blood Uncles off the list?
No, it gets grandfathered into the list. Like it's
grandfathered, yeah.
Yeah, blood grandfathered into the list. No, I'm not sure I've ever said it out loud until just this very second. So it's it just sort of happened.
If I remember right, it's on the list somewhere between Soup Weather and Mormon Tinder.
Mormon Tinder.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I don't know if you saw this, not to get way off topic here, but BYU and Utah are playing today. Speaking of Mormon Tinder.
Sure, yeah.
BYU and Utah are playing in the Holy War this weekend, and a player, I think for Utah, got in deep trouble for using a cuss word.
Oh, wow.
I know. Big problem.
Again, we're getting way off topic. I had a Mormon teammate when I played high school football, and when we were losing in our playoff game our senior year, he said "damn," and the entire team cheered.
Yeah. I can't believe we took the passing of my 2 great and wonderful blood uncles out to dating apps for Mormons in Utah, to the Holy War college football rivalry, and back to your high school football team in a matter of like 5 sentences. I think that's pretty impressive.
It's been incredible. You want to talk about the Titans?
Which is also going to be a long journey out west as well.
Sure.
All right, what about the game against the Patriots in your mind has carryover effect? What did you see? I think the aggressiveness, for example, I thought both coaching staffs, offensive and defensive, did a good job being aggressive and sort of, look, we're going to take the game to New England. I think they can stay that way. It doesn't mean they're going to win and that they're talented enough to do that to everybody. But I think that's something, for example, I'd like to see carry over. I think can. That confidence is something they desperately needed. So what from the game, because New England sucks. Just that, like a lot of what happened on Sunday is because New England's bad at football. But I want to know, what did you see in that game that you think will carry over, that they can continue this week against a much better team and in a much more hostile environment?
Yeah, it comes down to tone setting for me. A lot of the structural stuff is what it's been. It's just a matter of the Titans controlled the structure instead of played from behind with the structure. This is a team that I don't think had played well from behind at any point this season. This is a team that's always been pretty okay at playing from ahead or establishing that early lead. We see them play well in the first quarter. When things get tough, there hasn't been very much response offensively or defensively. And so seeing that response is a thing that made me think, okay, so structurally this team can do that. Now, they can do it against a team that is as good or worse than them. But I think you could make a pretty solid argument that when they played the Bears were as good or worse than them. When they played the Jets were as good or worse than them. When they played the Colts were as good as worse than them. Now they actually did it. And you head into a game against the Chargers, who we're going to get into this a lot. I think you and I might have differing opinions on the quality of the Los Angeles Chargers. But this is a team that does things or prefers to do things in much the same way. You build an early lead and you hold on to it. You clutch at death that early lead. And the Titans are going to do that too. So if this game stays close, or if this becomes a race to who can get up by 7 fastest, I think that what we saw last week is a good indicator that the Titans can win those kinds of games. Are they going to be able to win a 35-32 shootout at this point? I don't know if they're there yet. But if you're looking to win a 17-13 dogfight, I do think that there is something we learned last week that shows the Titans can at least be competitive in those types of games.
All right, so why do you think this team sucks, the Chargers? Why do you think they're so much like I think I believe in Jim Harbaugh. I believe in Herbert not throwing interceptions and playing inside of the confines of the offense. I agree that they do not have elite top flight personnel in particular surrounding Herbert, but I think the offensive line is better. I think the defensive front is not bad, and I think they're just a better overall coached football team than they have been in the past. Because I believe in kind of Harbaugh as much as he's this weird, goofy, like kind of jackwagon. Like I think he's a really good football coach.
Sure. And I think there's a difference between input and output. And I think there's also a difference between sucks and not as good as the record shows. I don't think this team sucks. I do think that the Chargers have 5 wins and 4 of them are against Cleveland, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Carolina, I believe. So 4 of the 6 worst teams in the NFL, maybe 4 of the 4 worst teams in the NFL right now, other than New England and Tennessee, as we saw last week. The Titans are in that tier. Like, I'm not saying, oh gosh, they beat up on Cleveland. They won't beat up on the Titans. Like, the Titans have played badly this year, and let's not ignore that. But I do think that if you look at the things that we're sitting here salivating about the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins is having this rebirth year that everybody's loving him on. He's 41st among qualified runners in success rate this year. He's not playing efficiently. He is just compiling yards because the Chargers are giving him the ball a lot. Justin Herbert's being so efficient. He's not turning the ball over. The offense is all this, 101 passer rating, this and that. I think he's 28th, 21st. I can't remember exactly, but he's in the 20s in success rate among quarterbacks. This offense is built to get what it needs without necessarily doing it the right way, which, if that sounds familiar, congrats. I'm talking about the Tennessee Titans for the last 6 years. There are clearly frameworks to win if you play that way, because the Titans did it. And Jim Harbaugh is very, very similar to that philosophy of win by getting what you need to win. And they're really good at that. And I think they're a superbly coached team. And I think Jesse Minter is probably a future head coach in this league. And I think his defense isn't getting enough credit for what they're doing.
Agree.
But again, look at the teams they've done it against.
But everything you just said, doesn't that make them better than the Titans?
I didn't say they're not better than the Titans.
All right. Okay.
I spoiler when you asked me at the end of this, I am picking the Titans this week because I'm a masochist. But
oh no, let's go into that right now. You continue, but then you can get to that.
It's going to be a game where I think at most both teams get the ball 8 times, 7 times. These are the 2 slowest tempo teams in the NFL. I think on average the Chargers take 31.5 seconds between snaps and the Titans take 31.7 or something like that. These are 2 teams that are going to drain the clock, that want to play ball control.
Yeah.
These 2 teams that when they get a lead, all they want to do is sit on it. And that's not to say that they're playing keep away or whatever, but the strategy is these long drives that exhaust a defense. That you can do it with the run game, you can do it with the pass game, but if we have a lead and we don't mess up, we're going to win. Tends to be the philosophy of both of these teams. And so if it comes down to a game where one team has to win it, I don't really know who has the edge, because it's just going to be who got the early lead. And that becomes a coin flip. And right now, the Titans, just based off of the fact that I saw them do it last week, and I don't necessarily know what the Chargers are.
Well, if you're going to ask, what is the one thing that the Tennessee Titans offense has consistently done all year, regardless of situation, opponent, and quarterback, it is play well when scripted in the first quarter.
Right.
So if that's going to hold true this weekend, and they get out to a huge 6 or 7 to nothing lead, that 2 field goal lead might be insurmountable. No, I will acknowledge that I think much more of this particular Chargers team than probably the average football fan or even the average media member or whatever. I know that I have like a inherent bias towards Jim Harbaugh for some strange reason. Every time he does anything around football, it is done well.
Yep.
And that is going to San Diego, not the Chargers, the Toreros, when he took the University of San Diego to a conference championship and developed an NFL quarterback at the Division II level, and then immediately took Stanford in the biggest turnaround in the history of college football, largely, one of them at least, built the entire program up to create all the pieces that are now playing in the NFL. Obviously, 3 straight NFC championship games, a Super Bowl, a national championship. I just the list is very.
He's really good at his job.
He's really good. His teams, his players do what I think will be interesting is and I'm curious what you think about this. Is that a good matchup for the Titans or a bad matchup for the Titans, in that on almost every single one-on-one battle or unit-on-unit battle or offense, defense, or special, whatever it might be, maybe special teams is a bad example because we know they're terrible, but does the fact that you're not playing against elite talent, but you are playing against elite execution, does that make it better or worse, more likely to win for the Titans, or worse? Does that make sense? I
see what you're saying. Yeah.
Have you heard my spiel about the fact that they're playing against
bottom 5%?
Let's hear it.
So I've said this for years. On game day, just truly the Sunday the game is played, I don't believe that coaching matters unless you have top 5% or bottom 5% coaching. Obviously through the week, game planning, scheming, coaching, hugely, hugely important. But generally, the middle 90% of football coaching isn't going to change too much on the game day itself, the calling of the plays and the subbing and the whatnot. So it becomes a talent versus talent game. Who has the better talent? Who's executing better? The Chargers have good execution because of their talent or because of their coaching. The Titans, when they have good execution, it seems to be because of the coaching and the talent. I do think that presents an advantage for the Titans just because the players are the ones who have to make the plays. Now, the 6 days leading into the game, I give Jim Harbaugh so much leeway. He is one of the best football coaches on the planet.
Yeah.
But yeah, on game day, talent matters more to me.
So the other thing, and this is much harder to quantify in the season because NFL players are so fully developed when they get here. The only reason you make it to the NFL is that you're basically a fully developed player on relative to all the entire sample size of the human race or whatever. You're fully developed. I am curious how much an NFL coach can do that stuff in the season, develop a player. Vrabel was a very good teacher who was very good at developing skill and technique and execution, but a lot of that work is done in camp and in the preseason. You're not really doing a lot of that, I don't think. I mean, I think, it's not to say that Bill Callahan is not doing a good job, like developing JC Latham because he's a rookie. But like, I just think you learn from reps, you learn from action, but really, this particular player doing this particular exercise or technique and this thing probably happened in the summertime, which is kind of backing up your point, right? Like
yeah,
Harbaugh's impact on this team is during the 6 days between and in the summer and in the offseason. And then, sure, some of it might be managing the game on fourth downs and in critical situations and tough situations and decisions. But it's about the other stuff that makes this team very good, in my opinion.
We're all taught growing up that maxim, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard enough, to a degree. But talent beats everything. And my wife is on screen. Hello, Becca.
Hey, makes her debut. All right.
We're all taught that. I think that is something that is said to people who need to work hard because they don't have talent.
It's the only reason I ever played any football.
Yeah. That was the only reason I was a team captain, was hard work beat talent. No matter how hard I worked, I was never going to beat Calvin Ridley in a foot race. And that's true of a lot of people on the Los Angeles Chargers.
That's true. All right, let's go to Will Levis here, and it appears that he will start by all accounts. That his arm, I saw videos of him throwing, and you were out there. It seems like his arm and his shoulder is doing all right. I am curious if you think there is a strategy to look if he's like 89%, and I don't know where he's at. It's hard for him to even know exactly where he's at. That you could make an argument this is a bad spot on the tough turf and the physical defense and the low scoring game and the kind of game we're talking about here. That you could argue that having him is at Minnesota next week at home, right? Like you could argue that a home game with an extra week to prepare it is a smarter way to bring him back in, because you're not bringing him back in to try to make a playoff run here. You're bringing him back in to learn how to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And to learn if he's capable of that. So you want to give him the best possible situation. Is this the best possible situation in your mind?
It's better than facing a Brian Flores defense in your first time back, right?
Like, I mean, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. I mean, for as much as we say, the home road split or whatever, it's two really good defenses. I think that the Vikings defense is probably a step above the Chargers defense right now just because of how they're playing and the way Flores has those guys schematically. That's going to be a tornado of a defense. Like that'll confuse the best, most seasoned quarterbacks. There's a lot going on there.
He's doing a lot of very creative blitz disguises and rolling players up and dropping different guys. Like they're just doing a lot of interesting stuff for sure. I agree with that. An extra week home game, you could make the argument that I think you can argue either one. You know what I mean? Like that's why I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah. The funny thing about this situation is that until we see him play, we can always make the argument, give him another week. Yeah. Let him heal up. Like we don't know the capacity to his body's healing factor until we see how he looks throwing the ball. And he can tell us he's feeling better, and he can tell us that he's processed through it. And from what I've heard about the severity of the sprain, of what grade it is and all that stuff, he's reaching a point where it's been a month, 6 weeks, something like that. That is generally the healing time. And I know he's thrown through it, and I know he's disrupted at some points, but like generally speaking, he should be rounding out to a point where the shoulder is not fully healed. Like I'm not saying it's 100%, but it should be playable in November of a season. So the extra week is purely mental. And if we're thinking that he still needs more time to mentally process it, we've made our decision about Will Levis. So as somebody who doesn't think that his brain is broken, I want to see him play football.
All right, then, because I tend to agree. I think if it is purely mental, then get out there and play, and the reps are what you need, and we need to see more data. What does good data look like to you in this game, regardless of the outcome? I'm not talking about win and loss here, because obviously you can define success as a win. I want to define progress, success, brain isn't broken, quotient. What does that look like for you in this game?
Go out there and do what Mason Rudolph did the last 2 weeks with 2 really, really nice downfield throws added in. Go out, be efficient, play within the confines of the system, and then have 2 really nice throws that build you some confidence that, he's doing what Rudolph can do. He's doing the dink and dunk and play within the confines thing. but he still has that talent that separates him. Go make those 2 throws, go show this is the talent. And then everything else stays the same because they just put up 400 yards of offense the last 2 weeks. Play that offense and show you have the talent to expand the offense, and then expand the offense later.
And it wouldn't be too much to ask to remove all of the fumbled snaps, albeit without Lloyd Cushenberry in there now. But Mason Rudolph had one against Buffalo. He had one last week in the red zone. Like there were some fumbled snap issues with Mason Rudolph, so maybe fix that problem
Sure.
as well. But I agree. I think it's move the football on. And here's the other thing: I want them to be in a position to run the ball in the second half. I know that's not all in the quarterback, but like if they manage the game well and he's efficient, he doesn't turn the ball over, does the things we want to see from him mentally, they should be in a position to maximize Tony Pollard in the second half the way they did last week. And I'm not saying he's going to have the same kind of production as last week, but you need to have him be a part of the game plan and a major threat in critical drives in the third and fourth quarter. Show that you can adapt, and this is more on the coaching staff than it is the quarterback in the second half. So I can agree with that. Hit a couple big shots to Ridley. Ridley's been targeted. He's come to life. He's engaged. He's still dropping passes, but he's engaged. Let's see what he can do with a big arm with Levis. Chuck it around down there. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah. I'm looking something up right now because you have gotten me curious.
All right.
I have a theory right here, and I'll be able to tell you if it's right within the next minute or so, that the Titans are actually running the ball on first down at a higher volume this year with Tony Pollard than they did last year with
it's gonna make people's heads explode.
So
no more first down Derrick Henry runs.
So this year they have run 123 times on first down on 221 plays. So that's 55.6. We'll call it 56% of the time. Let's go to 2023.
Please be more this year with Tony Pollard, Brian Callahan, and Will Levis than last year with Derrick Henry and Mike Vrabel.
Because I was thinking about that. Tony Pollard, the whole reason the Titans have been successful on these last 2 games is because of the way Tony Pollard is running the ball on first down. Mm-hmm. Last year, it was 53.7%. So about 2% more first down runs this year with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears than last year with Derrick Henry and company. So take
run pass.
I can run them. We don't need to waste time with me running numbers on second down now. No. But the key to success for this team, I'm sorry to be Mr. Broken Record from the past, is successfully running the football on first down.
Yep.
And Tony Pollard has been very, very, I think he's averaging 4.5, 4.7 or so in the last 2 or 3 games. When he is ahead of the sticks on first down, this offense operates successfully.
Yep. All right, you got the Titans on the road getting a second consecutive win over the Chargers. I will not pick that, but I could see it being like a 17-14 loss. Which is a close game.
That is my score prediction, by the way.
We didn't plan that, by the way. Okay, so let's do some midseason rookie reports here. But first, I want to tell you about Sinkers Beverages, 4-time Liquor Store of the Year. They have the award-winning, the capital V, like the Ohio State University, the award-winning craft beer retail fridge in the city. That's a weird way to put it, but they won Best Craft Beer Retailer as named by you, the Nashvillians, which means they have the best craft beer fridge in the city. You can walk in. They've got beers from all over the county, all over mid-state, all over. They've got the big brands. They got the big beer, and they've got a bunch of stuff from like Asheville and Birmingham and Athens, GA, and West Coast stuff. They got all kinds of New England styles. They got so much good beer. They won an award for it. So make sure you go check out their beer. Favorite type of beer? I know you're not a drinker, but what was your favorite type of beer? Are you I've turned into a hazy IPA and a sour guy, which is very weird because that's not what I liked when I was growing up.
I've always liked sours. I like ambers, reds sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's not an interesting answer. But
no, that was a terrible answer.
Beers I drink. Yeah. No.
Well, I was like the 7-8% ABV, like stouts and porters and IPAs for like the longest time, like late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s. And then I just was like, all of a sudden I got old. And I'm like, oh, it's too hot. It's too hot because I don't drink beer much in the wintertime. It's just too hot in the summertime to drink that stuff. And now that I'm old and I'm in my 40s, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll get a nice fruited sour. That'll go down smooth in the 96 humidity and the heat and everything. And the hazy IPA is way better than the IPA. Just telling you. So, and you can get all kinds of great, good, local, awesome beer There, they got huge runs of Bearded Iris. They got tons of Yazoo. They got tons of East Nashville Beer Works. They got Jackalope. They got Black Abbey. They got Tennessee Brew Works. They got everything in there. All great, awesome, good local breweries. So go check them out. And of course, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. or until the meats are gone, which is the sign of a good barbecue joint. Not keeping those meats for the night crowd. Just sell it till it's gone. 11 to 3 from Wednesday to Sunday. I want you to construct a perfect barbecue plate for me. Pick the meat, pick the two sides. What are you putting together for your favorite meal of barbecue? And I'm going to tell you whether or not these are available at Shotgun Willie's Barbecue.
If I am having a barbecue place for the first time, I always start with the most generic platter possible, which I consider to be pulled pork, green beans, mac and cheese.
Okay.
I will always test how you do at the basics before I expand to something more complicated. So throw a cornbread on there usually. That is my go-to first time in a restaurant plate.
So here's what makes so I don't disagree with the strategy. I think the strategy is the right play there. The green beans are called Tony's Magic Green Beans.
Fantastic.
At Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. They've got onion and pork in there.
As they should.
As they should. And the mac and cheese, I believe, is so the potato salad is like a dill pickle potato salad, which I think is a great touch. But I think it's a jalapeno mac and cheese, I think. I think it's spicy mac and cheese, but it's not overly spicy. It's like just the right amount, you know? Honestly, every side at a barbecue joint should have like a little kick to it. It's just sort of the nature of being in a smokehouse, I feel like. But yeah, I would say that's a perfect strategy at Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, except for I would do the brisket. I would do brisket with green beans and mac and cheese, which is basically my order most times I go. And they throw a bunch of pickles and like pickled onions on there for you to kind of like, do. It's like the ginger, like the sushi gets ginger, I don't know why people eat the ginger, but I feel like the pickled onion and the pickle is to like cleanse the palate when you go from brisket to green bean and back again. I don't know. Anyway, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday until the meat is gone. Y'all go check it out. It's delicious. It's fantastic. You should be there. All right, rookie report midseason here quickly. We'll work through J.C. Latham, progress till now, expectation for the second half on the offensive lineman from Alabama.
He has been as good as advertised, if not a smidge better. I still want to see him improve when it comes to being a actual difference maker. But the fact that we don't talk about the left tackle every single moment of every single game is the biggest progress, the biggest check mark you could ever give this team. All I said all offseason was you need to go from 32nd to 16th in order to consider this a win. And I think they've gone from 32nd to 16th. J.C. Latham might be 20th. He might be 12th. I don't know where he actually fits on the left tackle rankings, but it's not 32nd anymore. And because of that, check mark, you have progressed.
Progressed, always a good thing. I don't know where, to your point, like if we're actually doing the ranking, I don't know where they are. Like if it is it 21 in one game? Is it 12 in another game because he's playing really well or what or not? I think ultimately the most important thing is he's the answer.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to worry about that position now, probably for the foreseeable future, at least for his first contract, if not his second contract. So that means you got 5 years. And I think he is slowly but surely going to continue to get better. And I agree. So, quote, as good as advertised, possibly a smidge better. Okay, Tavondre Sweat, to date and expectations in the second half.
As good as advertised, possibly a smidge worse. Is that fair? I think that he is somebody who has gotten a lot of attention because he's a really interesting lightning rod of a player. I think he has been incredibly productive, but not in the ways that we judge progress. So or not that we judge productivity of you look at the stat sheet and he'll have a tackle and a half per game. He'll have 1 or 2 pressures. The things that we value among defensive tackles, the reason that defensive tackles can start making 20, 25, $30 million a year, Tavondre Sweat is not doing those things yet. So if you expected him to come in as an instant starter and be a 6 or 7 sack guy and be a guy who's getting 1 or 2 pressures a game and who is just completely disrupting the pass game, he's not there yet. And that is what I think everybody agrees we need to see next from him. But when it comes to be the guy who makes it so other teams have to at least consider single blocking Jeffrey Simmons, it's starting to happen. We saw that last week. If he is the attention grabber, maybe we have to double team this guy. The more double teams he draws, the better this Titans defense is going to be.
I think if you were to tell me, I'm trying to find. Do you know what his like the percentage of snaps that he plays per game? Do you have the average?
I can pull that up. Yeah, give me a second. I can pull that up.
So I think much like, I mean, I agree with your overall point, which is as good as advertised, maybe a smidge worse. I think what is interesting in the fact that he's started 7 games and played in all 8, I think is the first place you start with him, which is that all of those sort of like over the top concerns that people had about him and the weight and the size, like for now, not a factor. The fact that that story is not a story anymore, I think is excellent news for both him and the Titans. So I think first and foremost, the fact that like I'm starting with basics on both these first 2 picks, which is, did you solve the left tackle? And is Tavondre Sweat going to be a starting player in the NFL? And the facts are he is. Like, to your point, lots still to go, lots still to do, more to learn in terms of gap control and, you know, pressuring the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, he is a starting full-time defensive lineman, and J.C. Latham is your starting left tackle of the future. That means those 2 draft picks halfway through the first season are I would call them successful, very successful, even if the numbers aren't like extremely productive yet.
Sweat this year cleaning up 67% of snaps when he's been in games. By comparison, Jeffrey Simmons 79. So he's not quite playing at the volume Simmons is, but if he's out there 2 out of every 3 plays, that's great.
If you told me he was out there 2 out of 3 or 70% of the snaps, I would have been like, sign me up all summer. Yeah. For the first 8 games of his career, I would have said absolutely take that in 2 seconds. So next on the list is a guy we'd like to see play a snap. Cedric Gray. Hard to do the midseason report here with Cedric Gray. So
yeah, we can only go off of what we saw in training camp, which was frankly not very good or much. But I do think I asked Callahan about Cedric Gray yesterday. The path to him getting on the field is being better at special teams right now than James Williams or Otis Reese or Luke Gifford. I don't think he's going to surpass Luke Gifford on special teams. He's the Titans' best special teams player by a good mile right now. But if he can't surpass Otis Reese or James Williams on special teams, it's going to be a complete redshirt year. Yeah. And that's not great for a guy who you invested in the 4th round when you had other needs at, let's call them everywhere, more valuable positions than inside linebacker.
Especially with the green dot conversation that happened so fast for him. Yeah. And I'm not actually sure who the impetus was for starting that conversation, but I believe Rand Carthon was asked about it like at the draft press conference. I think you were there.
I was there, yeah.
I'm curious if that was like a fan media driven narrative about him, or if that was sort of kind of a combination, because I remember the defensive coaching staff talking about it too, like during minicamp. So like, I don't know. There was a lot of like weird expectations that kind of came out of like all parties at the beginning of his process this past summer. So
yeah, the vibes were weird about him. And I think that some of it was flavored by a very strange impression that Kenneth Murray was a figurehead. Like I think that there was some weird perception that Kenneth Murray wasn't actually going to contribute on this team. And he clearly has. I'm not saying he's a Pro Bowler or anything, but
the guy formerly contributor. Yeah, the guy formerly sitting on the show with me is the one who kept ripping on Kenneth Murray all offseason. Turns out he's pretty good.
I think it was born of that. Clearly enough. Kenneth Murray's not any good, so Cedric Gray, like I don't know, he is a solid NFL linebacker. But Cedric Gray, incomplete grade.
Yeah, /A. Jarvis Brownlee. Look, I think Jarvis Brownlee, this is one of those where like I think he is clearly proving that he is going to be well above his draft stock, number 1. Number 2, probably a solid contributor and a starter in the NFL, if nothing else. I think he played a terrible football game against the Patriots, one of his worst, dropping interceptions, penalties. He's picking up way too many penalties, giving up open passes, not sort of finishing plays. That, to me, does not take away from the fact that he is going to be a starting player in the NFL, which means he was a hell of a draft pick. And somebody, frankly, on this show, we were very high on the entire draft process. So we love this player. They drafted him. They got him right where we thought was value, and he has performed. I think it's a hell of a draft pick so far.
Yeah, it's all about the relativity of like, if, just to throw out the name because he was the guy last year, if Christian Fulton was putting up the production that Jarvis Brownlee is right now, it would be unacceptable. As a fourth-year former top 50 draft pick.
Yep.
A rookie 5th-round pick putting up this sort of production.
Yeah.
You see, that's a future starter. Good job. Yeah. And so, relative to draft positioning, the best pick the Titans made
so far.
Relative to production, he hasn't made the impact that Sweat or Latham has. And the next guy we're going to talk about, we're going to have a conversation about positive and negative production. But I would say throw on the tape of what Brownlee did against Miami, and you see the seeds of a guy who can, at the very worst, be a number 2 corner throughout the length of his rookie contract. And if that's the worst thing you're saying, that's really good.
Yeah, I assume it's, and this is going to be weird, I assume it's Snead, Brownlee, McCrary next year.
Well, we will see. Cheeto's contract is pretty big. That's a tough one to get out of. They'll figure it out.
All right. Jaquan Jackson, I would say, has the fact that he's been given the roles that he's been given sort of proves what we thought of him as a prospect correct, and that drafted where he was to earn a starting spot on the Tennessee Titans in an NFL team, probably better than his draft stock indicates. The problem is that when he is on the field and touching the football, not many good things have happened.
I was skeptical that Jaquan Jackson would ever be a wide receiver when he was drafted. And I remain skeptical that Jaquan Jackson will ever be a wide receiver. This team essentially played 3 wide receivers last week.
All of his targets are out of the backfield.
He was not a productive wide receiver at Tulane, and now he's in the NFL. So there were moments in training camp where I started to see the vision, and I am not going to take away what he did against Seattle in those joint practices. He looked really good.
He was.
So there is a lot of potential there. But right now we're talking about Jaquan Jackson, the return specialist.
Yep.
And he has not been a difference maker as a return specialist yet. I am not sounding the alarms and saying give up on him, put somebody else back there. There's limited spots on a roster. You have one guy who's on the 53 specifically to be this. Give him a chance to be it. But he's got to hold on to the football. He's got to go north-south more. He has got to
stop taking huge shots, too.
Yeah.
Stop that part.
Yeah. I think mentally, the preparation and the stuff that goes into being a football player, I talked to him about this yesterday. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. I understand why you buy into the guy, because process-wise, he is doing everything the right way. He's just got to translate it.
He's a pro. Mentally, he's a pro, which is good. It's a good start. And the fact that he's sort of, again, earning a starting spot, I'm calling it that, is a pretty big deal for a receiver drafted where he's drafted. But to your point, that joint practice was the high watermark for his performance as a football player so far this year in a Tennessee Titans uniform. And it was very good. Yards after catch, deep shots, it was kind of the whole package. Hasn't done it before, hasn't done it since. Certainly hasn't done it in the game or in the return game. Had a couple of nice returns in the preseason, I guess you could say, but he has not really made the big impact that, or at least in that role that he should be making. James Williams, next to last. It's hard to say because it's all the tools and attributes that you drafted him for are still very painfully obvious. The skills, the talent, the length, the range, the speed, the athleticism. It's all very obvious. And we just don't know how far he is down his development process in terms of actually playing on a football team full time.
You want to really niche prediction about James Williams?
Sure.
The Titans haven't blocked a punt since 2003 or something. It's been a ridiculous long time. He's going to be the next Titan to block a punt.
Okay. I can get on board with that.
I don't know if it'll be this year or next year.
Long, rangy, explosive. It's the perfect guy to do it. Not good enough to be a linebacker. Perfect.
We will see if he ever breaks in as if that talent translates to production as a defensive player. But I do like that skill as a special teams ace right now.
Yep. So I would say he is the pick that you made.
Yeah.
Right. I would say. All right, Jalen Harrell. So look, take away the bizarro amount of hype that certainly we all are guilty of, but mostly the fans. Take all of the hype away from the preseason Jalen Harrell. If you just take a 7th round outside linebacker who's undersized, that doesn't have elite explosive measurables, and you give him as many reps as he's gotten in a regular season, to me, that is a plus draft pick at that point. It doesn't mean that he is living up to the preseason conversation around his game, but that's not his fault. That's our fault / media family, whatever, fans. I think that's how I look at it. I'm like, if you'd have told me that this is the number of reps he would play as a 7th round edge player, like those guys, 7th round edge rushers don't play a lot of football.
Right. So. Like the perspective I like to give people about Jalen Harrell was closer to being Mr. Irrelevant than J.C. Latham was to being the number 1 pick. Like that is how late the Titans drafted him.
Yep.
And he is sitting here as, do you want to call him edge rusher 3? Do you want to say edge rusher 3.5, splitting with Ali Gay?
I guess, yeah.
He is a rotational piece as the 6th to last pick in the draft. He is a guy who usually when you're drafting in the 7th round, you're drafting a James Williams type. You are drafting a high ceiling. I don't know what he is. Jalen Harrell's not that. He's a Michigan polish guy. He is a.
You want to know where he got all that Michigan polish from?
Jim Harbaugh and company. Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter. That's right.
Yeah. And so I wrote a story about this. If you want to read the Tennessean, I have a story. Jalen Harrell talking about playing against his former coaches. It's a quick 400-word read. You'll get through it in a minute and a half.
I love it. Tennessean.com. Tennessean.com.
Go ahead. But yeah, Jalen Harrell, he's a polished guy. He is I have the tools to be a pro guy. And talking to him yesterday, in case you guys are curious, I'm going to write a big story, rookie progress report that you can read on the Tennessean tomorrow. You're going to get to see my unfiltered thoughts there as well. But one of the things Jalen Harrell told me yesterday was like, the marks of becoming a pro are like Arden Key and Harold Landry pulling him aside and being like, look, man, treat the play clock like it's a shot clock. Like understand snap counts, understand cadences, get your timing so you can do that. Like he is thinking about football not from a see ball, get ball ways, but like actually I'm trying to be a grizzled veteran in year 1 type guy.
Yeah.
And if that's the type of player you have as your rotational number 3 edge piece, I really like the pick.
If a rotational edge piece who's that type of player and that polished is a 7th round value pick, it's a hell of a draft pick. So, and Canton says, love the days with Nick. Great show, guys. Thank you, Canton. There you go. Marcus also likes sour beers because they're less heavy as he gets near 40. Agreed.
I also lied. I completely just whiffed on the pressure. The beer I drink the most is a Mexican beer. I just don't know why I lied.
And my wife loves that too. She's a big Mexican lager. Likes the Muchacho from Good People in Birmingham.
It's a good beer.
She likes that one. We've been big on the not to do this again, but we've been big on the Pep Talk lately from Bearded Iris. Very good beer. Nice, crisp, clean lager. Very, very good. Brewed here in Nashville. So go check all that stuff out. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Sinkers Beverages. Everybody, well done. All right, there's your midseason rookie report. You are picking the Tennessee Titans to win on the road and get their 3rd win, and sure to piss off everyone who only cares about the draft in the middle of November, which I think is stupid. But it's your prerogative as a fan. You are allowed to do what you like. So I get it. Plus the draft is fun. I understand that. All right, quickly in the SEC here, go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for the meats and go to Sinkers Beverages for all your beverage needs. They also have a bunch of non-alc stuff, a bunch of THC stuff. They got a bunch of like good stocking stuffers too. If you want to go check out they have like bar equipment. If you want to go get some good stocking stuffers there, good merch as well. So go check out 2 great local companies who support your community, who live and operate and work in the community, like one of you. I had a 9U with my 6-year-old last week soccer tournament, all day Saturday, all day Sunday in Clarksville. It was the end of the season. I am now done with that. It is still my favorite thing in the world to do, watch my daughters play sports. But I was so grateful looking at the slate of games last week in the SEC that I am going to be on the couch this week, starting at 2:30 on Saturday. You got Georgia and Ole Miss, less than a 3-point spread. I can't believe that this could be the final. This could actually be the game that Ole Miss does the thing that they spent over $10 million on, which would be hilarious to me that if it just actually worked. an elimination game for Ole Miss in the playoff potentially, and then immediately following that we get Alabama at LSU in Death Valley nighttime. Also a playoff win and you probably get in kind of game for those two. Lose and you're out for sure. The message boards will be absolutely burnt to the ground in Tuscaloosa if they're the one that happens to lose. What do you make of these two games? Who you like? And you can kind of base it off of what's wrong with Carson Beck, if you want to start there.
So I will tell you something that I observed while you were doing something wiser and watching your daughter play soccer last week. I have watched just about every game of the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford. That was the best coached game Ole Miss has played in the Lane Kiffin era. That was the most impressed I was by a Lane Kiffin team.
They dropped 60 on Arkansas, by the way.
To go out, drop 60 on Arkansas on the road in a look-ahead week. Of like, that is the game that Ole Miss always loses or always struggles in. They never go into a game like this feeling good about themselves. And like,
but they do. So, and Vegas agrees.
I am going to sit here and say the dumbest thing I've ever said.
Oh God, let's do it.
I'm picking the Rebs. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I am a Georgia grad who spent 5 years living in Athens. I am a former Ole Miss beat writer who spent 5 years living in Oxford. I have all of the biases. Idiot. I have done all of these things. I have lived through the best and worst of both of these programs. I am a fool. I am an idiot. I am a jagweed. I'm picking the Rebs.
Attaboy.
I am buying into this Ole Miss defense. The havoc they create, the pressure that they create, the way that they have stressed quarterbacks. Yeah. Carson Beck, still a future pro. I don't know if he's still a first-round pick, but he's still a future pro.
He is confused right now.
This Ole Miss defense has to be licking its chops, especially the way that, let's say, Pete Golding has a bit of a history against this Georgia offense.
I think the problem is going to be protecting Jackson Dart. That's the concern. I agree with all your analysis, but how do you protect? Because the Ole Miss offensive line didn't hold up against Kentucky, or anybody else. So it'll be interesting. I'm taking Georgia, but I see your point. Here's my Tennessee theory, real quickly. I think they are Georgia light. I think they're fine being conservative in the first half, knowing that their defense is going to keep them in games. They have a quarterback who's very talented, but can make some mistakes. Is maybe not all the way there yet. They have a great running game that they're going to lean on in the second half. And they're just sort of conservative. They poke and prod and test the waters in the first half. I just think they're operating in a very Georgia-like way. And that's maybe an insult to Georgia fans who think it's like an insult to their offense and to their championship hopes. And it's probably a compliment to Tennessee because it means they've closed the gap in this conversation. So just a theory I wanted to throw out there, and because, I wanted to see what you thought about it.
Disagree.
Ooh, okay. Why?
I just don't think stylistically there's nothing to me that resembles Georgia in what Tennessee does. I'm not
talking about scheme. I'm not talking about the scheme.
I get what you're saying. I understand that they are trying to program build in that way, but I think that, like, I've had this debate with some other beat writer friends for years of like the two kinds of coaches that people tend towards in college football are scheme coach and CEO coach. And I think that Tennessee still has more of a scheme identity and Georgia still has more of a CEO identity. And that's changing. I think Georgia's scheme is becoming more unique. And I think Tennessee's CEO approach is becoming better. Like the gap is clothing, but I would still say Tennessee wins because Heupel's schemes are so unique and interesting. And Georgia wins because Kirby has built a program CEO style.
Louis says, anchor down, fools. We are going to trump the orange people. Look, here's the most Tennessee thing that could possibly happen. They beat Georgia on the road to win a spot into the SEC championship game and then lose to Vanderbilt. Like, that would be the most Tennessee thing you could possibly do. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Vanderbilt at home has been very, very good. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Tennessee. There's nothing about the way Tennessee has played in any game this year that would say that they are going to blow out Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia. So there you go. Bama LSU. To me, this is about Jalen Milroe. Brian Kelly said it after the game 2 weeks ago against A&M. We couldn't stop the RPO. We couldn't stop the quarterback run game. We couldn't stop any of this. And if I was the other team, I would run the quarterback on me. You know who's the best at running the quarterback in all of college football that doesn't run a triple option? Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe. So I have Bama here. So
I also have Bama. I will steal this from a buddy of mine, a very, very hardcore LSU fan, who has spent the entire year referring to his head coach as Tampa-Londo Brian. They're going to either be in Tampa or Orlando, and that's just kind of where they're at.
Hey, they're big wins though. They got a chance to be the winners. Got a chance to very much be in, absolutely be in the college playoff.
I think so too. I think the FPI I saw watching the channels yesterday. Alabama with a win, I think FPI gives them a 68% chance of making the playoff. LSU with a win gives them about a 50% chance of making the playoff. We'll see. I'm taking Bama for the same reasons you said.
Yep.
But I would not at all be shocked if this LSU team, with the talent that they have, especially on the offensive line and defensive line, I wouldn't be surprised if they present a real challenge.
The question for Alabama has been in the secondary on defense, and what does Garrett Nussmeier do very well? Attack down the field into weak secondaries. So there is an option there for this to be a very interesting, high-scoring game, actually, which is very unusual for the Alabama LSU. I'll take both road teams here, but I don't know. South Carolina-Vanderbilt, and we'll wrap up on this. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. This is as high a compliment as I can pay to a South Carolina-Vanderbilt game that we did not expect to be this important or interesting. It is one of the most fascinating schematic games I can remember of the year. The way that Diego Pavia and that running game for Vanderbilt is kind of like just a triple option at this point, like a modern version of the triple option against a defensive front that is just extremely talented and explosive and great at getting up the field, is a fantastic schematic matchup. On the other side, you have Clark Lee in the Vanderbilt defense that wants to keep everything in front of you and make you go the length of the field, and kind of like Jim Harbaugh's teams where they're going to be very disciplined. They're going to finish tackling all the way to the whistle. They don't allow a lot of big mistakes and explosive plays. And South Carolina lives and dies on the big explosive plays. So it's just a fascinating schematic matchup on both sides of the ball. And either team could win. I cannot remember a time where I'm like, I have to tune in for the South Carolina Vanderbilt game this weekend.
Not to do a previously on a football show, but last week when I picked A&M to clean up against South Carolina, the thing I said was, when your entire team's built around the pass rush and the other team doesn't care to pass the ball, what strength do you have? Clearly, South Carolina is built to do more than rush the passer. Yep. But the same sentiment remains of, if Vanderbilt does not plan on dropping back, that limits South Carolina's ability to make game-changing, force the turnover, havoc plays. So I don't know. I still think Vandy has a good shot in this one, but South Carolina has impressed me more than I thought they would.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, the best way to slow down and neutralize an extremely talented defensive line that you can't block is to not block them. It's to read them and to run off of those reads. And Diego Pavia can do that. Now, he might also lose a limb in the process, but he can absolutely do that. So it's going to be fantastic. Oklahoma, Missouri is very interesting. The playoff rankings are out. I don't think there's anything to be taken from them other than it's a reality TV show. You don't need to pay attention. But honestly, I think the SEC is actually a little underrated. I think Georgia could be higher. I think Tennessee could be higher. I think Bama could have been higher. So I don't know if you have any takeaways from the rankings, but otherwise, my advice to folks is it's going to work itself out. Don't worry about it. So
I think that the opinion about the SEC completely depends to how good you think the middle tier of the SEC is. If we really do think that Vanderbilt and South Carolina and these teams in the mid-tier are true pests that are playing well, SEC is underrated. If we think that the SEC is having a down year, SEC is having a down year.
All right, everybody, that about does it for us. Enjoy a great weekend of action on in the SEC, and of course a big game out west against the Chargers. Should be a lot of fun. Tennessean.com for all of Nick's work. You can check him out there at Nick Suss as well. You can get to me at Braden Gall, and of course Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and the great folks at Sinkers Beverages. Check out both of those great, amazing local businesses. Have a great weekend, everybody. For Nick, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys on Monday.